everybody wants to get united. Like, what we gotta do is meet everybody on 149th Street at the bench.
When sketching graffiti, most people throw caution to the wind, hoping for a wild style to just appear on the page, and if you're new in graffiti, this could be kind of difficult. So in today's video, I'm taking you through my entire process, step by step. From rough lines to final details, I'll show you exactly how I sketch, explain every decision I make, and share tips and tricks that can level up your work instantly. And by the end of the black book session, you wouldn't just have watched me sketch, you'll be sketching smarter yourself. So without wasting any more time, let's pull out our black books and get right down to the black book session. So a few weeks ago, I came out with an extensions tutorial where I expressed how some people like to go directly into details, illustrating and drawing things like their extensions right off the bat, directly onto the letter. Now this is fine for more experienced graffiti artists, but both experienced as well as amateur graffiti artists can really benefit from just sketching the basic letter first, without any details, without any extensions, anything of that sort. And that's kind of the approach we took with this piece, is we're going to draw pretty much just the base structure for the letter. So you'll see here we're beginning with a lowercase g, where we have the round bowl in the front, and then we have a slanted stem on the back. Now for me personally, I happen to like a really large bowl in the front area, so you'll notice that my close counter reflects that. It allows for a lot more meat on the left hand side of that bowl. From there we're going to start going for the actual hook on the bottom of the G, and notice that we are using the basic boxes here. We're making sure that everything aligns properly the way that it needs to. You can't really forget about that when doing a piece. If your basic boxes are off, your extensions simply just are not going to work, because the foundation that they're built on is sloppy and unstable. So we have to make sure that we're paying really close attention to our basic boxes and how the underlying fundamentals are organized. I got a little carried away with the serif here on the bottom of the G, and I decided to go ahead and shrink the whole G in order to let it fit. But this comes with consequences. Understand, every decision you make when it comes to your letters is going to have kind of like a give and take, right? So we shrunk the G as a result of the low hanging serif on the bottom left. And because of that, we have a really large amount of negative space between the bottom right of the G and the bottom left of the G. And that's something that we're going to have to deal with. We can't simply just have those things work. So in this case, I'm actually going to go ahead and select the second half of that bend there and push it closer to the rest of the body of the G. And I'm going to lean the whole G to the right after doing that in order to help mitigate some of that negative space. Now you can suddenly see that the bottom left of the G and the bottom right don't have nearly as much negative space between them. To help balance the G back out, we're also going to lean this top portion of it back inwards, and we will tend to the basic boxes after we position things. So you'll notice immediately after doing that, we begin refining some of those lines in order to once again get the anatomy of the letter a little bit closer to what we need. I need to stress, when you're wanting to get into extensions, you truly need a strong foundation for your fundamentals. If you don't have a strong foundation, you're going to be stumbling all over yourself when it comes time to add extensions. So don't make the learning process any harder than what it needs to be. Quick little break here. Check out our How to Do Graffiti book in the description down below. We have digital ebooks at theartistblock.inc with physical copies over on Amazon. It's the easiest way to learn graffiti. We teach you each one of graffiti's fundamentals, which no other book on the market does. And we hold your hand through the entire process with hundreds of pictures, making it perfect not only for brand new graffiti artists, but experienced graffiti artists as well. Check out digital copies of the book at theartistblock.inc with physical copies over on Amazon. Use this coupon code at theartistblock.inc to save yourself some money. It's at this point we essentially have the basic G down pat. Now granted, I did say we were starting with our base structure, you know, without adding style, and admittedly the G does already have style added to it with its letter distortion with the bent portion on the bottom as well as the serif. Both of those things are stylistic flares. I want to be clear about that. So here I certainly went into details a little bit early for the G, and we added that letter distortion. That's something that you'd really want to wait to do, especially if you're learning the fundamentals. If you already know the fundamentals, then you can do whatever you want, but if you're just kind of grabbing onto the fundamentals and you're starting to understand them, then you'll want to wait before doing things like that bend at the bottom of the G. Now here we're beginning to illustrate the R. So with this R, we decided to go with a 2-box R, which happens to be one I really enjoy. I actually really like the 2-box R. I think it just looks really nice, and I like the way the structure gets to push out horizontally for the leg first and then shoot back down towards the baseline with the second portion. There's a lot of stuff you could do with that, so I kind of enjoy playing with that, and I like the way the leg ended up in the final image here. But at this moment I'm still trying to decide, do I want a straight leg or do I want a 2-box leg, and how do I want the 2-box leg to be angled, because I am leaning towards that 2-box leg. I'm trying to make that work. But while I still want, and this is important to note, while I want the 2-box leg, I also understand the utility of being flexible. When you're doing a piece and you're trying something out, you have to be open to other possibilities. If you get dead set on one design design or one way of doing a specific thing, that's kind of how you run into problems, multifaceted problems as well. You run into the problem, number one, of where you end up doing the same thing all over again, over and over and over, and eventually you just find yourself doing the same piece for years on end, which a lot of you guys complain about from the older school writers. But you also run into a different problem entirely, where you get so stubborn on getting a specific thing in your piece, hand style or throwy, to where now you just won't let it go, and it stays there, and it never looked good to begin with, but it's still in your work. It's factually incorrect, and it brings everything down. So here we decided to go for a little bit of both. We have the 2-box leg, and it shoots out horizontally, but then it comes at a pretty steep angle to the right hand side in order to shoot over, well, to the right hand side, and it kind of resembles one of those legs that kicks out. More so resembles a 1-box leg with how it kicks out in that way. So I really liked that idea. It's kind of like a little blend between both worlds, and I really liked having both of those options. Now here we draw a nice little oval shape for the tittle of the eye, and then we're going to slice that in half. Once again, another instance of me about to begin adding style into the letter before I actually draw the letter. I had to refrain from doing so we kind of gave up on that. Initially, my initial thought was that that line would tie into an extension or an exterior detail that lines up with the eye's structure. We talked about this in the extension tutorial about how lining things up can really help your extensions out a lot. So that's kind of what I was going into there with. And I kind of decided against it really quickly, because you'll notice that that little line I just drew for the eye just then lines up with the angle on the leg of the R, and I liked that as well. So from there on the eye, the bend that goes down to the right gives us line uniformity and similarity with this diagonal on the leg of the R. And then we kind of go back and bend the eye one more time to go down into the left, which once again resembles the same angle we previously had flow with. Anytime you can build line uniformity and similarity, it's definitely a good thing to build. Line uniformity and similarity is essentially just like the glue that holds your letters together, and it's what gives you that cohesion. It's a really strong thing for your graffiti, and utilizing it whenever you can is definitely only going to benefit you. Now, you don't have to take it over the top, but a little here and there goes a long way. So now we're starting to connect some letters on the G. I start, wanting to clean certain areas up so I can get a better idea of what my sketch is going to look like. So we erase some of the overlapping lines to decide what parts of letters are going to overlap what other parts. Now, because the G is currently overlapping the R, that's a lot of structure we're losing out on in that left-hand side of the R. For that reason, we're going to want to make the R's presence a little bit more notable, a little bit more stand out, if you will. So we're going to want to do some things that bring attention to it, and you'll see that here in a minute. But at the moment, we're trying to figure out the bottom of the eye. So when it comes to this bottom portion of the eye, I'm asking myself a few questions, and this is really important when you're doing a piece and you're trying to add extensions, right? You want to ask yourself questions. What questions? Well, you want to ask yourself questions about the fundamentals, more specifically. So I'm looking at this and I'm like, all right, I have a lot of negative space between the bottom left of the G and the bottom right of the R. I want to fill this negative space. How might I do it? Well, I've positioned my eye in such a way where the bottom of the eye can easily fill that negative space. So now the question becomes, how do I make the eye do that? How do I make the eye do that in a way that complements its letter structure? We're trying a lot of things out here at the moment, and I do this really strong angular terminal to the bottom left of the eye that is meant to reflect not only the eye's actual letter structure itself, but this portion of the R as well. I then want to go ahead and connect the R to the eye with a little tiny extension that kind of bridges the gap between the two. But even right now that it's drawn and illustrated, I'm not feeling it. I'm looking at it and I'm like, that's not staying in the final piece. There's no way I'm keeping that. But for now, we'll leave it because it's a placeholder. I'm still thinking things out. I'm still mentally kind of chewing on this piece to decide how I want to go ahead and fill the space and how I want to integrate the bottom left of the eye into the R. That's something I really want to shoot for. At this point, we begin working on the serif of the R, and initially I thought to myself, oh, you know what? It would be cool if the serif of the R connected to the eye directly. That'd be pretty cool. And in practice, I wasn't feeling it. This goes right back to what I had mentioned earlier about how you don't want to get really stubborn on a certain design. You have to be flexible enough in order to change things up. So instead, we decide, for now, we'll have the R hold the bottom right of the eye up, as it visually looks to be part of the reason why the eye is able to lean the way that it does. So aesthetically, I liked that idea, and we decided to keep that. And it's here that we begin to erase that extension, that bottom left area that I was previously talking about, and we try something else. And for now, we go ahead and we place this serif on top of the R, and even when doing this, man, I was thinking to myself, this is covering too much of the bottom left of the R. I already have the G overlapping the R quite a bit. I don't want to overlap it more, but this is what I ended up doing. This is one of those things where you might might want to add a lot of things to every area of your piece, but some areas just may not call for it, right? Some areas might call for a little bit more structure, a little bit more visibility on that section, so you don't want to overlap them too much, and they might call for less detail. Believe it or not, you don't need to cram detail in every single part of your letter. So I still haven't figured out a solution for that bottom left area, and I decided I'm going to leave it for a little bit later as we work on something else, and we're going to work on just the actual base structure for the eye at this point and try to narrow down its horizontal portion. We also cut this structure of the eye deeper into the actual bottom portion as well in order to develop the verticality of the eye, because at the moment there isn't much of the eye's vertical stem, if you will, so we want to add a little bit more however possible, and that's what we did there. So now comes time to do the M. While I kind of process what's going on in my piece currently, we're going to start blocking out the M, and I'm thinking to myself at the moment, alright, the left side of my name has a lot of weight. The eye gets covered quite a bit. It doesn't have a lot of its own weight. So we need our M to be bulky, fat, and really meaty, if you will, just to kind of build some of the weight back on the right hand side. See what we can do there. And this is where we want to begin asking ourselves some questions again, because now our M's design is going to be based on what we analyzed about our piece so far fundamentally. We looked at our G and our R and our I, and we said we need more weight. Now our M's whole design is based around balancing the weight. That's something we didn't do with the G or the I. The G or the I were designed off of a premise, off of an idea for what I thought might be cool, as to where other letters in the piece, once again, are going to help that idea and kind of solve some of the fundamentals that my initial idea might have left slacking. So we just block in the base structure here, nothing fancy. Our basic box is aligned properly. You'll notice we have a really tight and cramped in center area for the M, just to mitigate how far the M reaches. I know I want the M to go ahead and have a lot of weight, but I also don't want it to extend too far and be too fat, because then it'll cause a lot of problems. A lot of problems that I don't want. We decided to shoot the serif of the M straight down into the structure. This is just something I like to do from time to time, in all honesty, and it's something that I know at this point in the piece I'm gonna be doing between the G and the R. I'll still try other ideas potentially with the G and the R, but this is kind of the thing I'm planning on for the G and the R, and you'll see that later. The I cuts a bit deep on the top portion of the M, so we're gonna want to go ahead and separate the two by having the first and the second basic box of the M join together and mesh together pretty far down on the left hand side. That way we can see more of its structure. There's not a lot of negative space between those basic boxes, in other words. Now here comes the fun part. Now is the time to go ahead and bring the weight to the M. Most of the weight is really going to come from the serif and the terminal for this letter. That's where most of the weight is going to come from, which is a bit of a theme in this piece, where the actual core of the letter isn't all that large, and then it blasts off and really bulks up towards the endings, towards the terminals. That, once again, that's kind of a common theme throughout this piece. So now that I've already decided on that aesthetic, now comes the problem solving of how do I get there? What designs am I going to use to accomplish that? Now we're going for a standard terminal, a standard serif, if you will, and we're kind of teaming it up with the R on that bottom section. I still haven't finalized the design on the bottom right of the R, but we're problem solving. We're just getting the base in there, right? Nothing fancy, no detailing as far as like the nittier grittier stuff, but we are starting to get into details. We are starting to illustrate our serifs. We are starting to illustrate some of the interior details and some of the extensions. Now, keep in mind how this M came to be. We started off just with a base structure. That's about as basic as it gets, right? We had just a pure M with zero style added, and then we built on that. And you can already see the difference. This is a pretty stylized M. It's not a wild style by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still something that a brand new graffiti artist can easily achieve without the need of copying other people. I'm trying here a tiny serif on the eye, and it's already too small. It's not proportioned with what I have throughout the piece. That's something you want to keep in mind. Sometimes new graffiti artists, they tend to add extensions, add details that are not proportioned with everything else that they're doing, and it doesn't work as a result. It doesn't feel like it fits within the context of the image, and that's something that you always want to keep at the forefront of your mind. So we got rid of that immediately, and instead we begin working on the top of the G. And it's here where I had some ideas for the top, and I decided, you know what, screw those ideas. I'm not bothering with any of that. I'm just gonna go ahead and do what I initially thought and just make it, you know, unified with the M. Give us some uniformity there by having the serif shoot directly down into the structure, and then have both of the serifs from the G and the R kind of connect into one another and connect those letters that way. It brings those letters a little bit closer together, and once again builds letter uniformity and similarity. I immediately started thinking of some extensions to add to the G, some experimental stuff that like probably wouldn't work, and well, no surprise there, that didn't work. So what did I do? I got rid of it. I can't say this enough, but when you're sketching, play around with ideas. Even if you think they may fail, play around with ideas, because sometimes an idea that you think might fail actually ends up working out for the best, and you end up thinking to yourself, man, that's really sick, that's really cool, that's something I want to do on other pieces. Before you know it, you might have a new interior detail, a new kind of letter distortion or extension that you really like doing on your pieces. That's what we call happy accidents. This is a good time to just sit back, now that all my letters are done, and just look at the piece and analyze its fundamentals. Once again, when we do this, we're always thinking about going down the list of basics. You got letter structure, negative space management, letter name weight, letter name positioning, and flow. I got tutorials on all those if you guys want to check them out. And when doing this, you really can analyze what is missing from your piece. Are my letter structures good? No? Alright, go back and fix them. Make sure they're fundamentally correct. Are my letter structures fine? Yeah? Alright, move down to the next fundamental. Negative space management. Where do I have too much? Where don't I have enough? Go ahead and fix those. Letter name weight, same thing. In this piece, I see that my M actually has too much weight, and now I need to add weight back down to the G, which we're actually going to begin doing here. And before I get into what we're doing here on the G, just remember, you can go down the list of each fundamental, asking yourself questions about it, and that'll be what you base your extensions on, that'll be what you base your adjustments to the letters on, and that'll be what you base your corrections on. So now for the G, we're deciding to go for some more detailed terminals here, which is the ending of our letter, that's what a terminal is, and we're going to see how we like that. At this point, I like the way that terminal looks, I think that looks pretty nice, but now I'm going to introduce some stuff that needs to fit across the piece. We need more letter uniformity and similarity. So we're going to want to start implementing this extension here on the bottom of the G to fill in this negative space. I don't want that negative space there, alright? We could have some really unique depth that gets added with negative space, but I want to add that depth in a different way, while still being able to fill in the negative space. So notice how the origin of our extension connects directly into the terminal of the G. It then goes along the structure before shooting down into the right, away from the G to fill in the negative space. So you'll notice our origin flows, our travel distance flows in the beginning, and then it stops flowing specifically to complete its objective, specifically to have a reason for the travel distance, which is to get the destination to fill negative space, which the destination does. Right after I did that, I realized that is a perfect terminal slash serif for the bottom of the R. Let's implement that. And I like my previous idea of having the serif hold the I up, so we're gonna have this new detail do the same exact thing. It's completing the same exact objective, but now we simply just designed it differently in order to build letter uniformity and similarity with what we have on the G. Now suddenly our letter structure is directly tied to an extension as far as aesthetic is concerned. But we need at least one more of these. For me personally, I like to implement at least 3 of a detail when it comes to these bigger things, or prime numbers. That's really what you want to go for, just because it maintains balance, visual balance. So we'll be adding at least one more of these little swirls around our piece. Now we're adding another extension on the left of the G, once again because we still need more weight. We analyzed again and we thought, you know what, I know what I want to do with the M. We're going to need more weight on the G for this. So we go ahead and add a little bit more weight to the left hand side, and we add a star to the extension just to break up the monotony with the extension. So at this point of the piece, I know I'm doing 3D going down. If I have 3D going down, then this super straight line for the extension is going to make for some very boring 3D that lacks a lot of depth. That's why we add this star. But what does adding this star mean? Well, it means we need to add more stars. Remember, flow is one of Graffiti's fundamentals, and we need to have letter uniformity and similarity. So more stars it is. But this creates a different problem. I need another extension, I need another star, but do I have the room for these details? The answer is yes. We just gotta figure out how to fit it. I also begin playing with the idea of changing the bowl for the G, but I really wasn't feeling it. I thought maybe I can have the bowl give some line uniformity and similarity with the bottom left serif on the G, but I wasn't really liking the way that was turning out. I decided to go against that and erase this bowl a little bit later. So once again, I'm at a point where I know the details I need to have, I know the adjustments I need to make based on the fundamentals, and I end up seeing something. I see an opportunity to take this angle from the R and shoot it down to the I. This solves the problem I wanted to solve before, where I didn't like the serif on the bottom left of the I knew I couldn't keep it, it had to go. But this new solution allows me to not only fill the negative space that I've been wanting to fill here in this area, but it also allows me to line up extensions for added flow. It also allows for an extension, which is really good, and it also allows for a suggested structure. Now, if you know me, you know that I really enjoy suggesting letter structures. It's something I'm always doing in my graffiti. It's not something that anybody has to do. It's not like the right thing to do or anything of the sort. It's just what I like to do, right? So now suddenly we have the suggested structure of the 2-box leg that shoots really deep into the bottom of the R and then connects to the bottom of the I. And then we have the other actual letter structure of the R, which is the first 2-box leg we created, that shoots past the eye and then holds it up. I like that aesthetic a lot. So now I'm looking for ways to align our line work more. And I think to myself, all right, well, I already have the R aligning with the bottom of the eye quite a bit. Let me see if I can get the I to align with the M. So that's when I go ahead and redesign this terminal, and I have this little extrusion of the I shooting out past the M. And that's going to be important because I'm going to make that line up with something else a little bit later. I also see a great opportunity for the top right-hand serif of the I to actually line up with the M quite a bit. So we begin playing around and redesigning some things to see if we can get that to work. Since we're constantly asking ourselves questions about the fundamentals throughout the entire process of our piece, I noticed the G and the R, now they weigh a lot, and I have to once again counterbalance on the M. This is the back and forth you constantly go through. This goes for all art forms. This is just how it works. So it really, honestly, getting good at art really just means you know what questions to ask, and you know the answer to those questions. And then how you illustrate those solutions, which in this case, I'll go ahead and kind of word this differently, but we ask questions about our art. For example, our letter structures weigh a lot on the left. We need more weight on the right. How do we add that weight? That's the question. Well, how did we add it? We added this new extension on the bottom right-hand side of the M in order to help build weight. And we added the star that we're putting in there now on the top right of the M. That's how we illustrate the answer. And how we, once again, I want to stress, how we illustrate is up to us. That's our style. And immediately, just with those little changes, you can see that it's beginning to balance out a little bit more. It's going to balance out even more because we'll be adding more details on the right-hand side, but that's the kind of give and take you're constantly playing in art, no matter the art form you're doing. So I still have work to do on the I-M combo. I got to find a way to integrate them and have them line up properly. And this right here is going to require that we take some of the I's structure away because we don't want too much line work covering the letter M. Otherwise, it's going to get too cluttered, right? So we're making the extrusion a little bit more prominent on the M. We're also going to begin working on the tittle because I have the G and the R connecting to one another on the top portion in a way that brings the two closer together. Well, now I have to do that on the I and the M for letter uniformity's sake. So I do literally the same detail. I use that line that I first put in the tittle of the I in the very beginning for a totally different reason, and now it's found a new purpose. Now it connects us to the M. This is going to require that we do kind of change things up in this area a little bit. I need to pull this extension a little higher. That way you get to see some of the volume of it, and that's what we're doing right here, where now you get to see more of that positive space for that extension. It becomes a little bit more prominent in that way. We also go ahead and decide, you know what, let's pull the serif for the I real nice and high, make it nice and noticeable, and let's have that align with the letter structure of the M. It doesn't really distort the letter structure, doesn't really hide the M's letter structure all too much. You can still very much see that the letter M is there, so it's not obscuring the letter structure, but it is bringing more of that cohesion to the piece because we're repeating elements, we're repeating motifs and details. And because of now I've extended this top part of the I's extension so high up, I decided, you know what, let me do something like what I did on the R and slide a piece of the structure along that line. So we take the tittle of the I and we slide it up. And seeing that, I do get the thought at this moment, you know what, let me actually slide some part of the G and some part of the M as well. That's an aesthetic I like. That's an aesthetic that we're going to be bringing to the piece. I'm not doing it at the moment, but keep an eye out because I will be doing it at some point. Now, we also, I forgot to mention this, we added a star on the top right of the M, but we need primary numbers, right? So we need a third star. And at this point, I'm thinking, how can I make the lines of the star align with other lines nearby? That's what I'm trying to figure out at the moment. So you'll see I'm trying different orientations. I'm not getting stubborn about any of my design options. I'm not getting stuck on one specific outcome. We're just thinking to ourselves, let's make a star, let's have it align. How we do that doesn't matter. We'll try different things out until we get something that we like. Initially, I had this star detached from the piece, almost like an exterior detail, but I didn't really like this because it didn't allow for the alignment to be as functional, and it also didn't have as much letter uniformity and similarity as it could have. Does it have letter uniformity and similarity? Obviously, of course it does, right? Because it's a star, we already have other stars, but it doesn't have as much as it could have. I'll go ahead and I'll take this to conclusion, right? I'll go ahead and I'll test it out, I'll implement it, but as I do so, you can see it doesn't really look like a star as much anymore. We lose a lot of the emphasis on that detail, and overall, just not really feeling it. Gonna want to try a different solution here. This is where we connect it back to the leg of the R, and we make sure it aligns with the bottom of the M. We then kind of do some interior detail work here to see if we can get any of those to align, and ultimately, once again, those are going to be some more lines that don't really work out. It interferes with the structure of the R a little bit, and we already have the lines in this area for the R and the bottom of the I that we want to keep. That means those two lines I just drew inside of the structure for the ones that I'm erasing right now, actually, those ones are gonna have to go. But I erased the vertical one, and I think to myself, you know, that horizontal one's not too bad. It maintains the eye, and it, you know, this is a bit of a bonus. It's not too important, but it does align with the bottom of the M serif, so I'm alright keeping it. It doesn't distort anything too much. Turns out getting rid of just the vertical was fine. From there, we move to the G, and this is where we go ahead and we slide this piece up. Now, that's one of the benefits of drawing digitally, isn't it? Is the fact that I can, that's so easy. I could just select it and slide it up. If this was a pencil sketch, I'd have to resketch the whole thing. And we're gonna go and implement the same thing on the M as well. Now, this is gonna change some stuff up because now I have to analyze the fundamentals again. What fundamentals are changing? Letter structure, a little different, still intact, perfectly fine. Negative space management, all right, you know what? Our negative spaces are pretty well handled. They're pretty well balanced. I do have a little bit of work to do on the M though at the bottom area, so let me start thinking about that. Letter name weight, everything looks to be weighing pretty good for the most part, with the exception of the bottom right of the M and the top left of the G. Everything is pretty solid. Positioning of the letters and the name is good, and the flow is good. So far, things are going on track. We're kind of headed in the right direction here. We just need a few more design choices to help round things out. I know I still need an extension to bring letter uniformity and similarity, like the one I have on the bottom left of the G and the leg of the R, that little swirl. I'm gonna need another one of those. I haven't quite figured out where to place that though. Now here's the thing. I've come up with a solution for the bottom right on the M. I want to add a compressed extension. But what does this mean for the piece? I can't just have that one. I need to add more. So I add one on the bottom of the G as well. This gives us, once again, letter uniformity and similarity. However, I need to work in prime numbers. Whatever detail I have on the bottom of that M, it has to work in at least 2 other areas for this piece. That way I can hit my prime numbers and visually keep things balanced. And there really isn't much room left to be adding compressed extensions, but I have a place in mind where one might work. And then I get hit with an idea. I could just have the swirl extension line up with the bottom of the eye that protrudes through to the M. That's an easy solution, and it helps to add a little bit more weight. Not too bad at all. So the bottom of that extension is actually going to align with the bottom of the M, and then the top of that extension is going to align with the eye. That way we can add some thickness to that extension, and it's not so thin and so meek. We don't really want an extension like that being super weak. We need some dominance, some presence in that thing. And once again, I want to stress, because some people, you know, they see these videos and they have this idea that I'm telling them how to do their own extensions, or, you know, you should design yours exactly like mine. That's not at all the case, right? Design things how you want. I'm just showing you guys my thought process and kind of the workflow that you can also use to accomplish your own work. The kind of also showing you guys the questions that you should be asking yourself throughout the process, because those questions are really what facilitate a good drawing. Those questions is what's going to allow you to problem solve through your artwork, which at the end of the day is really all you're doing. It's all you're doing. As you saw in this video, the entire result of this piece is simply from us asking questions. Our G bends, we need our R2 as well. How do we do that? Our G and our I bend, we need our I to do that. How do we do it? The rest of our letters bend, our M needs to bend. How do we do it? That's all we're doing. That it's just a series of questions that we're asking, and then we're illustrating the solution. I also like the fact, and once again, it's another little bonus, it's not too important, but I like the fact that the extension from the M goes into the star as well at the bottom of the eye. I thought that was pretty cool. And now we're doing the compressed extension I was talking about earlier. This compressed extension is going to help to fill in some space and help to make our 3D that we add a little bit later a lot more dynamic on this M, which that's another huge reason why we decided to add this compressed extension. It was for the 3D and the depth. And we made sure to make sure this compressed extension also aligns with what we have on the bottom of the M already. So those two things align pretty well. And now we just add a little interior detail in the bottom compressed extension. And to be honest, this piece is just about done. All we need to do is add another compressed extension here on the left-hand side of the G for letter uniformity and similarity, clean up some line works, make a little bit of refinements here and there, outline it, color it, and we're good to go. Don't forget, we'll have the file to this exact drawing. You can download it in the description down below for free if any of you guys want to go ahead and grab it. It's in there in different file formats, that way you can open it with whatever. But for the final design, I decided to go for this nice blue kind of fade. We also have a nice burgundy for the 3D, and weirdly enough, a little hint of purple in that 3D as well, working with some harmonious colors. Then I decided, this actually was another happy accident when outlining with a certain brush that I made, which you can actually buy my brush packs. I have them in the description. They work for Procreate. I drew like a white key line around the letter, and I thought, wait, hold up, that kind of looks like torn paper. So then I added the blue for, like, you know, ballpoint pen and little doodles around to make it look like it's somebody's notebook that they were doodling in. And I actually really like that aesthetic. I might do some more pieces like that, almost like they were ripped out of a school notebook. And a little reference to the back of the class, really old show I used to do here on YouTube ages ago. But man, that brings me back. Let me know what you guys think about the piece in the comments down below. And if you like these full-length videos, also let me know. I'd be down to do more of them. But dudes, if you want to learn graffiti, pretty much the stuff that we talked about in today's video is taught to you in our How to Do Graffiti book. Check it out in the description down below. We got digital copies on the artistblock.inc with physical copies over on Amazon. And use this coupon code to save yourself some money. Want the best How to Do Graffiti tutorials anywhere online? Check out this playlist up top with more graffiti content down here.